On a one PC streaming setup and want to improve your control over your audio? Multiple audio tracks, keyboard shortcuts, and more? Well, let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to how to improve your audio setup on your one PC streaming computer, Windows 10, for under $25. I'm going to dive into several different parts, including going over pros, cons, installation, explanation, as well as full setup. All of the timestamps will be on the screen right now, so if you want to look for just a specific part, there they are. Alright, let's dive in. What do you get from a virtual audio mixer that can seriously improve your streaming PC setup? Let's go over a couple pros and cons. Number one, as you can see right here, one of the biggest improvements on your stream is that you can have multiple audio inputs for different sources. So for example, if you look at my particular setup right now, I have a separate audio source for my desktop sounds, my Discord sounds, my microphone, my music, and my sound effects, which allows me to mute certain parts. For example, if I'm at a VR back screen, I can still have music playing with no desktop, Discord, or microphone sounds coming through whatsoever. Other benefits include things like a shortcut keybinds for changing volume, as well as also adding some improvements to your audio quality, and of course having some fun things like voice sound effects. Now, there is two quick cons I want to mention. When you're using a virtual mixer, you have to integrate it into your audio. In other words, it's going to be running all the time, which will take a very small performance hit. It's nothing big, but if you're somebody who's running extremely tight on your processing power, it might not be something for you. There is one other con I want to mention. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to set up Voicemeeter Potato, a particular virtual mixer. When you have hardware outputs, occasionally Voicemeeter will go staticky on certain outputs. In order to fix that, all you'll do at the time is hit menu and hit restart audio engine, and it'll take a couple seconds. But it is just something I do want to mention, disclaimers, and hopefully this is something they will fix soon, but just want to let you know about that before we dive in. Alright, let's install Voicemeeter. Now I have all the links in the description, but if you just go to Google, you can type Voicemeeter with 2 E's. That will take you to vbaudio.com on Google, and click the first link, and we're going to install Voicemeeter Potato. Scroll down, click download or install, either one will work. And then the other thing we're also going to grab for this tutorial is we're going to grab what we call a virtual audio cable. Now, virtual audio cables are kind of like a real audio cable. They have an input and output. However, the entire thing is virtual inside your computer. This is something that's handy for creating control. Now, I mentioned that under $25. The first part of this tutorial, we're going to do stuff that's entirely free. Voicemeeter Potato, you can download it, try it for free up to 30 days. After that, you can get it for under $10 Canadian, even cheaper in the US. This virtual audio cable, the first one we'll be using, will be completely free, so you can follow along, test it, see how you like. So download virtual audio cable, download Voicemeeter Potato. Now the setup instructions are very simple. All you do is just run these. If there's any issues and it doesn't want to install either of the virtual audio cables or the Voicemeeter itself, all you got to do is make sure you right click, hit run as administrator, and then click yes. As far as installing Voicemeeter Potato, all you need are Voicemeeter Potato and Voicemeeter macro buttons. These are the two key things that we're going to be using. You can install the others if you like. They're not going to cause any issues. Alright, so you have it installed. If it didn't run automatically, simply go down into your search bar and type Potato, because we're going to be firing up Voicemeeter Potato first. Here we are with Voicemeeter at the default settings. This is what it looked like when you first started up. Before I go over how to set up everything individually, let's go over and explain each individual section. Now, it looks very complicated, but as we break it down into individual parts and talk about each one, how many things are repeated, it actually becomes a lot more simple. So let's start over here on the left side. This is the part that we call the hardware inputs. So in other words, all of your real life inputs, such as your microphones, anything else coming into your computer, such as a phone or any other sound, even virtual audio cables in some cases, will be coming in through one of these 5 inputs. Now, each of these 5 inputs is actually completely identical to each other, so I'm only going to cover one, and the rest will be simpler after that. So you'll see up here at the top, we have the name. You can right click to change the name. These are my custom names I have, which you'll see we'll be filling out shortly. If you left click on it, you can choose that. We'll do that when we actually get into the tutorial. Don't worry about that for now. And then we get down into some of the settings. Now, the first thing here, we have what's called the IntelliPad. This is basically just adding some effects to this input. So if it's your microphone, you can do cool things like adding a bit of bass, removing some bass, a little bit of echo, and other things. The important thing to know is this is the fun panel. This one you play around, try with it, see how it sounds. It's a lot of fun. All you need to know is you can left click to move it and double left click to reset it, and right click will go through the 3 different panels, and the last one being left right, and then you're back to the beginning when you right click the 3rd time. Alright, audibility. We have a compressor and we have a gate. We're not going to be using the compressor on here. For now, just know that the compressor can be used to reduce audio streams, but like we'll be using that in OBS. Now, the gate here is very important. This is something you can also do in OBS, but I prefer to do on my mixer. The gate basically means if you're below a certain volume level, it will prevent the audio from getting through. This is to remove things like extra little bit of static, background noises. Next section, we have the special effects. This is just for sending reverb and echo. We'll go over that when we do it. This part is just fun. Nothing too much to worry about right here. We have external effects. We're not going to worry about that at all. We're not going to be using that. So if you want to look any of these up, all of the instruction manuals, but these we don't have to worry about that. We're not even going to be setting any of these stuff up. Finally, we have the most important section, and this is your volume and your output routing. So we have your volume on the left side. For those who don't know, 0 dB means it'll leave it at the volume it's set. You can turn it up to positive if you want. That's normally not recommended, or you can bring it down. This will be very important for balancing out your sound. Just know that if you right click, you can set the sound to an exact level, and if you want to reset to 0, just double left click. And then we have on the right of that here, we have our set of outputs as well as our mute, solo, and mono. The big, most important part here is this, the A1 through 5 and B1 through 3. These are the outputs that this input is going to. A1 through 5 being your hardware outputs and B1 through 3 being your virtual outputs. Now you may be wondering what those are, and we're going to cover that right away here in the next bit. So A1 through 5, B1 through 3, let's look at these. Up on the top right here, you'll see outputs, hardware outputs. A1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those are the ones that we were just talking about. These are your real outputs, such as your headset, your speakers, or anything else that's receiving sound on your computer. If you click on one of these, you'll see I have a whole bunch of different things, such as my sound card, my gaming headset. These will be setting up as our real outputs. Those are the A1 through 5 that you saw back on your hardware inputs. Next section, let's go to our virtual inputs. These relate closely to our virtual outputs. Let's talk about virtual inputs. These are 3 virtual inputs that Voicemeeter has created to work with your system. When you're using other programs, you'll see 3 new things that your computer can output to: Voicemeeter VIO, Voicemeeter aux, and Voicemeeter VIO 3. These are the core of Voicemeeter, allowing you to route sounds through Voicemeeter and then adjust them and send them out on other virtual outputs or hardware outputs, whatever your needs be. So let's go over the section. All 3 of these, like I said, are identical. So we'll just go over the left one. You'll notice we have up here the equalizer. This we're not going to talk about. This is a more advanced feature for just improving sound quality. We're not going to be using these in this tutorial. You can go look at the instructions, see how to use them. Very simple. We have your left, right, balance, front, rear. That's also we're not going to worry about. That's if you have 3D sound setups. Down below here we have our programs. These are just programs that are outputting on this particular channel. Because I had certain programs outputting on these channels in the past, they show up there and you can mute them. And then you'll notice down here below we have the same thing as before. We have our volume control, we have our 5 hardware outputs, and we have our 3 virtual outputs, as well as the others. Now, I mentioned virtual outputs. You don't actually see them on here, but same as we have 3 virtual inputs right here, we also have 3 virtual outputs, B1 through 3, matching the 3 names up at the top. These are extra output channels that you can send to, which allow you to split up your sound in what you saw earlier when I had different outputs going into my OBS from things like my Discord, my music, my sound effects, etc. Let's keep moving through this. Over here on the right, we have our recorder. This is just simply something you can use to record sounds off your computer and play them back. I'm going to be showing you another program which is only $5 on Steam called Soundpad. It's a soundboard that allows you to play SFX way easier than this one, so I'm not actually going to show you how to use this one because I have a way better one, but I will have a link in the description on the instructions. Then on the right side here we have our special effects. This is just for turning on reverb and delay. This we'll be going over when we have some fun with it. Nothing to worry about. External effects return. Not going to worry about that either for now. Alright, then we have our final panel. This is all of our outputs. We have our 5 what we call physical or hardware outputs, and we have our 3 virtual outputs at the end. So you have your volume, you have some little bits of EQ things. We're not going to go over all these. There's some things for receiving certain echo effects, etc. There's also your volume, which is the most important part of this that you can use for rebalancing, because you can balance your audio both on an input and as it's going out. Lots of control here, and we have that for both our 5 hardware outputs and our 3 virtual outputs. Alright, let's get to setting up the mixer. You'll notice I didn't talk about what's on the menu. That's because we're only going to worry about the specific things that we need for this. Now, one thing I'm going to note is the restart audio engine, right? If the mixer gives you any static or anything on 8 channels, click this. It'll take a second or so. It'll reset the mixer. You can also save and load your settings. Very useful to ensure that you don't lose anything once your mixer is fully set up. And so what we want to do is we want to start by turning on System Tray Run at Startup. And what this will do, it will make sure that the audio mixer is always running when your computer is started so that you never lose sound, because we're going to be feeding all our sound through the virtual mixer. Now, the other thing to note, you'll see a little icon popped up here at the bottom. If you don't see this, it may be up here in your little settings menu. All you have to do is drag it down into the bottom. And if you want to bring up your mixer, if I close my mixer right now, I can click on that and it'll bring it up for me. 2 other things we're going to do, we're going to turn on macro buttons. This we're not going to be using right away. And then I'm going to be hooking the volume keys for level output A1. This is just if you have any special things on your keyboard for changing, muting volume, it will hook it into the virtual mixer rather than into your system sounds. Alright, let's go into our first setup. Let's route your desktop sounds through the virtual audio mixer. So what you're going to do here is you're going to go up to the top right and you're going to click on A1. And under the WDM, this is your best sound setting, find your primary audio output. Alright, this is the audio output that you're going to be using all the time. For me, This is personally my gaming headset, but if you normally use speakers, you're going to be switching it to your speakers or your sound card output. For me, I'm going to be using my gaming headset. Now, this is now set that A1 is my gaming headset output. Now, the virtual mixer will be setting my sound out to my gaming headset. Let's go and tell Windows to send sound into the mixer, because right now the sound from Windows is not going into the mixer. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to go down to your little sound icon on Windows 10, right click on that, hit open sound settings. It'll bring up this window. Now, as you see, my outputs have been chosen as my Logitech Gaming and my microphone. What we want to do is we want to feed this through Voicemeeter. So go up to your top output device, left click it, and find a Voicemeeter input, a virtual input. Now, there are three of them. As I mentioned before, there is the VAIO, aux, and VAIO 3. It doesn't matter which one of these you use, as long as you know which one you use. I personally recommend using Voicemeeter aux, just because that's what I'm using. It'll make it easier for you to follow along with the tutorial. The most important things which look for is Voicemeeter, and it says aux. That corresponds directly to the virtual input of Voicemeter aux. And then one other thing we're going to do, and this will just help for some games, is I want you to go into your sound control panel, go down to playback, and find the same one that you just set in your output, which in my case is Voicemeter aux input. Right click on it and make sure you click set as default device, and right click on it again and hit set as default communication device. This will just ensure that you always get the right output and that none of your games screw up and take other inputs that they should not be taking. Then click on OK. Alright, so now your desktop audio is actually routed through Voicemeter. And now you'll see if I do a quick test here and play audio on my desktop, that the Voicemeter aux virtual input actually goes up. You can see that Voicemeter aux was receiving audio and it's outputting it back to A1, which means that I can still hear it. That's step one. Your desktop audio is now routed through Voicemeter aux. Let's do your microphone next. Now what you want to do is you want to go into Voicemeter Potato. You want to left click on your first hardware input. Now you can see I've already renamed it microphone. You can do that. Go down to WDM and find your primary microphone. If you have a gaming headset as your primary microphone, you can use that. For me, I use my streaming mic, so I'm going to use microphone Rode NT-USB. Now you'll see when I talk that it's actually coming through on this channel as well. Now I don't want to hear myself. I'm actually hearing myself when I have it set to A1, so I'm going to turn that off. That means that I'm no longer hearing it through A1. Remember what I said before when we're routing sounds, if I route it through A1, it now comes in through my headset. If I turn that off, I don't hear it. So that's one of the first advantages we'll see. Second thing we're going to do is we're going to set it to actually output to something from Voicemeter. This is where we're actually going to take advantage of Voicemeter's functionality and that virtual audio cable that we downloaded. Because what I want to do is I want to have two microphone outputs. I want to have a microphone output that I use for my games that has both my voice, sound effects, and other things mixed, and my microphone output I use for my streaming that has nothing but my voice. So I'm actually going to be outputting my microphone to two different outputs. So go up here to A2, left click, and we're going to find the virtual audio cable that we installed. And this is WDM cable input. That is now set to A2, and all you have to do is check on the A2, and my microphone is now outputting to that setting. I'm going to be using cable input as my default communication device for Windows. So what you want to do is you want to go back to your sound settings window that we saw before, go down to your input device, left click, go down, find cable output, which is the opposite side of the cable that we just outputted to. Select that. My system sounds are now automatically being routed through Voicemeter onto this output. So anything, even your desktop sounds, if they're routed to A2 on your mixer, they will go through your microphone channel and be heard by your friends, games, whatever it is you want, which can be a little bit of fun sometimes. Then just to make sure everything is okay, we're going to also go back in, we're going to click on sound control panel, go to recording, go down, find the cable output that we just set, right click on it, hit set as default, and then click set as default communication device. That will now ensure that everything is routed through that output. Click OK, and we can now close your sounds. Congratulations, you're now using your microphone through this. Now remember how I mentioned I wanted to actually be able to have two outputs, one for my game sounds, which we just set up, and the other one for my OBS Studio. So what we're going to do is I am going to bring up OBS Studio. We're going to route my microphone into OBS. Go into your Voicemeter, and I want you to uncheck B1 by clicking on it and click on B2. This is a personal preference, this isn't a massive thing, but what we're doing is we're now routing my microphone to A2, which is the one that we just set up, and we're also routing it to B2, which is your virtual output from Voicemeter into a channel called Voicemeter aux output. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to go into my OBS, I'm going to click on settings, and this will work also for Streamlabs OBS. You just go into your settings, and I want to go down to my audio tab, and I want to go down here where it says mic auxiliary audio, and right now I have it set at default, so it's using the same one that my Windows is using. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to click down, and I'm going to find voice meter aux output. You can see right here, voice meter aux output, and I'm going to click it onto that, and I'm going to hit apply. Now, you'll notice interesting here, if I hit OK on this, it's actually using it. If I go into voice meter and I uncheck this, suddenly my OBS is no longer getting it. So you can see how it's kind of routed through these. So let's turn that back on. So now my microphone is routed into OBS purely on B2, all right? OBS does not get anything else for my microphone. Let's go and route Discord into a separate audio channel. So what I want you to do is I want you to bring up your Discord on your desktop, hit the little options icon down for user settings, go down to voice and video, go in and click on where it says default, select this to cable output. This is just to ensure that it's using the right microphone. Go to your output device, find voice meter VIO 3 input. So what will happen now is whenever anybody speaks on your Discord, instead of showing up on your default aux channel, it will now show up on your VIO 3, which means we can route it to a separate section on the board. So what I want you to do is I want you to uncheck B1, which is what we were already using, and check B3. And what this means is Discord will now come in on B3. So bring up your OBS Studio again, go down, click on the little plus icon, add a new audio input capture. We're going to call this one Discord, find voice meter VIO 3. Here we are, voice meter VIO 3 output. Click that and hit OK. Now that channel is getting nothing but your Discord voice sounds. Let's go in, let's do your music next. Now, there are several different music players that you can use. I'm going to show you how to do 3 of them: Pretzel Rock, Spotify, and a web browser. So let's start with Pretzel Rocks. Pretzel Rocks is the easiest. All you want to do is download their personal player, go down into options, and change the output. And I'm going to set this one to voice meter input VB audio. You can see it right there. So now if I hit play on voice meter, you'll see it is coming in on the VIO input. And I'm going to leave this one set to B1. I'm going to go over to your OBS, hit audio input capture. We're going to call this one music, and we're going to hit OK. Click on down the default and find voice meter output VIO. This will now capture the music being played on B1. If I uncheck B1, it doesn't come through. And another quick thing I'm going to do to ensure that channels aren't conflicting, I'm also going to uncheck B1 here. So now what we have is you're able to hear everything. Your Discord comes in on a separate channel B3, your music comes in on a separate channel B1, and your microphone comes in on a separate channel B2. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to go ahead and do it with Spotify. Now Spotify is slightly more tricky. Go down to your audio settings, right click on the little speaker icon, hit open sound settings. Scroll down on the page it comes in, hit app volume and device preferences. Scroll down the list till you find your Spotify app, change it from a default and change it over to voice meter input VIO. And now your Spotify will also come in on this track as well if that's what you use as your primary music source. And the final one is your web browser. The same thing with Spotify. Bring up your browser source, make sure something's playing on it, right click, open sound settings, scroll down, app volume and device preferences, find your web browser, hit the down arrow and find voice meter input VB VIO and select that. Alright, I'm going to wrap up the video here. We've covered a lot today in this tutorial, so I hope it helped. If it did, perhaps press the like button, but there's still more to cover. You may have noticed we haven't covered how to do shortcuts, so we're going to be doing another video part 2 coming out in 2 weeks. We're going to be doing shortcuts in the next video, as well as also covering how to do voice effects and finishing the setup so that your setup is pristine as possible. So if you want to keep up with that, make sure you subscribe. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments or come visit my stream. I stream every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Alright, thank you for watching. Have a good night. Peace.